Welcome to Mind the Business, a show created to help you navigate through the ever-changing world of business.
All right, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Mind the Business Radio. I am Darwin Strong.
I'm Ernie Costello.
And I'm Suzanne Strong. Thank you for listening.
And we have a great guest. Mike Goldman is with us today, and Ernie's going to tell us a little bit about Mike.
Yes, today we have a great topic. It's called Building an A-Team to Drive Your Business to the Next Level.
Ooh.
So, and our guest today is Mike Goldman. He's a nationally recognized speaker, consultant, and author of the book Performance Breakthrough, The Four Secrets of Passionate Organizations. He has over 25 years consulting and coaching companies from the local entrepreneur to the Fortune 500. Throughout his career at Accenture and Deloitte Consulting, he helped companies like Verizon, Disney, Polo, Ralph Lauren, Chanel, Kmart, Dillard's, Liz Claiborne, and Levi Strauss. And in 2007, Mike founded Performance Breakthrough to help mid-sized companies achieve dramatic business growth. He does this by working with leadership teams to ensure they have the right people, strategies, and execution habits for growth. Mike's clients value his vast experience with organizations of all sizes, as well as his incredible passion and energy. His no-nonsense practical style enables individuals and teams to uncover opportunity areas and achieve revolutionary results with laser focus. So Mike, since we're going to be talking about building an A-team, why would we build an A-team?
Well, number one, because an A team's a heck of a lot more fun to be on than a B or a C team. But
yeah, that's true.
I love. You guys might be familiar with the Container Store retailer, and
yes.
And one of the things I love is this gentleman, Kip Tyndall, who's a CEO and founder of Container Store, has this great philosophy he calls 1=3, and 1=3 means one superstar performer equals the productivity of 3 mediocre performers, 1 to 3. So that means you could actually pay people double, but still get a return on investment of that increased productivity. So having what I call an A team, to me, is more important than having the right strategy. If you remember the book Good to Great, which Jim Collins' book, I probably read that 5 or 6 times over the years. He talks about first who, then what. First figure out who you're going to surround yourself with as a leader. First get the right people on the bus, as he says, and then figure out where to go. So having an A team is critical. You can't be an extraordinary company without an extraordinary team.
So can you define an A team?
Yeah, for me, an A team is a team of A players, and I'll tell you what I mean by A players. Number one, an A player, and this is kind of the obvious part, an A player is someone who is highly productive in meeting and beating their goals. And that, I think most people would use to define A players. The challenge is most organizations use that as the only way to define an A player. It's a lot more than that. So number one is that they're highly productive. Number two, they're living the core values of the organization. And what that really means is they're a fit for the team. When I work with organizations, one of the first things we do is help them discover what their core values are. What are the non-negotiable behaviors that are going to anchor their culture as an organization? And you could be a high performer, but if you're not living the core values, if you're not a fit for the organization, you're actually a cancer within that organization. So number one, it's they're highly productive. Number two, an A player on an A team is living the core values. Number three, they're continuous learners. If they are not learning and growing, reading books, going to seminars, wanting to learn new things at work, they're not an A player. Number four, they challenge you as a leader to be your best. And number five, they're engaged and they really believe in the company's purpose and the company's vision.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they don't believe in that, then they're not going to stay engaged very long. They're not going to do their best work.
Okay.
Wow, that's
So
a lot.
it sounds like it can take some time putting an A team together to find people with all these qualities.
It does, and it's a combination of two things, really. You know, one is finding people that have those qualities, but the other that's super important is developing those people within your organization. You know, how do you turn your B players into A players? How do you make sure that that the A players that you hire stick around and
Mm-hmm.
refer other A players? Most organizations, I'd say, have a philosophy which they execute on, although they would never say this out loud. They have a philosophy of fire slow, hire fast.
Okay.
And that is a recipe for failure. The philosophy people really need to be living is hire slow and fire fast. But folks do the opposite of that, and here's why. What happens is an organization, a leader has a C player on their team. They've got someone who is not productive, who is not living the core values. They're hurting the culture of the organization. They're not lifelong learners. They're not engaged. They're not passionate about what they're doing. But they don't get rid of that person. They let that person stick around on the team. Now, why do they do that? They do that because they're afraid if they get rid of that person, well, now I'm going to be short-staffed.
Yes.
So I wait around.
Oh.
I say, let me wait, before I get rid of that person, and I know I got to get rid of them, I need to wait until I have someone else to fill that position.
But having
Now,
him there makes you short-staffed anyway.
Well, it makes you short-staffed anyway because your productivity is lower for
Yeah.
having that person on board, and you're hurting the people around them.
Yeah.
But what happens is if you've got someone on your team and you're waiting to fire them until you have a replacement, or instead of firing, I like to say, send them to go to work for your competition. If you're waiting until you have a replacement, it's never really urgent for you to find that person. So you wind up letting them stick around for a year or a year and a half until you get fed up, until the organization gets fed up, until your A players are storming your office saying, what the heck is going on? And then you finally get fed up and say, all right, this is the last straw. I've had enough. Now I really got to fire this person. I have no choice. You fire them, then you have nobody to take their place. So what do? Do you take your time to find the right cultural fit, the right talent fit for your organization? Or do you rush to hire someone because you got to fill that empty hole on your team?
Well,
what folks do is then they rush to hire someone.
So, in the meantime, can you just divide the duties and say, hey, guys, can you take the pieces of this on until we find someone to replace this C player?
You can absolutely do that, but I'll tell you another secret. When you get rid of that C player, very often everybody else's productivity increases. So you realize there's not a lot of extra things to divide up. You don't have to add a lot to the rest of the team because the team's productivity has gone way up. I'll tell you the other secret of not falling into this trap of keeping a C player too long is before you need someone. You've heard the phrase, dig the well before you're thirsty, right? Before you need someone, build what I call the virtual bench. And the virtual bench says before you even have a position to fill, if you're a growing company, and all of the companies that I work with are either growing or they aspire to grow. If you're a growing company, you always need to be out there looking for potential A players.
Okay.
So I suggest my companies, make a list. Who are the 10 people you know and trust, and like you? Give them a call and say, hey, I'm growing. Who do you know that's an A player that I ought to talk to?
Okay.
Now, the first question is going to be, well, who are you looking to hire? Is it a salesperson? Is it an accounts payable person? Is it an operation? Who do you want to hire? And the answer is, we're growing. In time, I'm going to need all those folks. It's not about a specific position. I need to talk to A players. I need to talk to potential A players. You get out there and have those conversations. Mm-hmm. And by the way, when you have those, and they're not interviews, they're just, let's get together for coffee. Because chances are that A player is happy where they are right now. And you may not have a need for them. But you keep in touch over time. You also ask them who else they know. Because who else do A players know?
Other A players.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
So you build that virtual bench. Now when we have a need to hire, either because of growth or because we've got to let a C player move on to somewhere where they could be happy and we could be happy. Now instead of having to rush to hire someone, when you do that, if month after month you're building a virtual bench, now maybe you've got a dozen people who could fill that role, already waiting to talk to you, and chances are one or more of those people are going to be ready for a move and want to work with you.
Okay.
Well, it sounds because a lot of sports teams do that. They already have a list of people that they would want in their organization.
Yeah, they have to replace people who get hurt
or retire out.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so you always have to keep a list of the people you would like to have on the team, so you have people kind of ready to take over if someone departs or moves on to something else.
Yeah, now imagine, if you're doing that as the owner, as the CEO, and you're having, let's say, 3 conversations every month where you're adding those folks. If you got along great with them, had a great cup of coffee or a great phone call, you're adding them to your virtual bench. It doesn't take too long until you've got dozens of people out on your virtual bench, but now multiply it, depending on the size of your company, by the 4, 5, 6 people on your executive team who should be doing the same thing. And now inside of a year or two, you've got literally hundreds of people potentially on your virtual bench, dozens that could fit a whole bunch of different positions, so that you can constantly be looking to upgrade your team.
Okay. Well, anyway, we have that's just great
Makes
information. We have to take a quick break. You're listening to Mind the Business Radio. If you want to hear us, you can listen to us on iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Spotify. So check us out, listen to us, and we'll be right back right after this.
Does your business sell products or send data to customers in Europe? Do customers from the European Union stay at your hotel or bed and breakfast? If you answered yes, then a new international law applies to you. It's called GDPR, and it could potentially bankrupt your business if you choose to ignore it. To find out more about GDPR, go to www.mindthebusinessradio.com and click on the GDPR Turbo Pack link.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back from our break. We're talking with Mike Goldman, who is talking about building your A-team. And so we were talking about the definition of an A-team and finding people on a virtual bench.
Are we an A-team?
Not quite. I'm trying to get rid of our C player right now. He's just hard because he has all the technical knowledge.
Gotcha.
All right, Ernie. Thank you very much.
But anyway, Mike, what are the biggest mistakes you typically see as companies try to build a strong team?
Yeah, there are a few. The first one we've already talked about. The first one is falling into that C player trap where you keep them too long, and then you wind up hiring really, firing slow and hiring fast. And as I said, what you want to do is fire fast, get rid of that cancer quickly, and hire slow. Take your time to find the right people. So we've talked about one. Number two is when I ask leaders to think about their A players, their B players, and their C players. And when I work with clients, I've got a specific way I work with them to define who are their A's, B's, and C's. And I say, who are you spending your most time with? What they find is, and they kind of answer this with a smirk because they know it's not the right answer, is they're spending most of their time with their C players. Oh. And then after that, it's their B players, and they look at their A players and say, thank God I've got these A players. They can go do their work. They don't bother me. I don't bother them, and they get their work done. And that is absolutely a backwards way to think about it.
It sounds so inefficient.
Well, it's inefficient, and though it's counterintuitive, when you think about the A, B, and C players on your team, think about who has the most potential for growth. And the counterintuitive piece is the folks with the most potential for growth are your A players. Mm-hmm. Your A players are great, and they have the ability to be the best there ever was if you have them leverage their strength, if you coach them, mentor, challenge them. Your A players, the growth for most of them are limitless. Your B players are not living the core values. They're not a fit for the organization. And while you can coach people to improve their productivity, you can coach people to build skills in certain areas, it is difficult, if not impossible, to coach someone to be someone they're not. If they're not living the core values, if you're all about collaboration and they just as soon work in a corner by themselves because they don't like people very much, you're not going to coach them to like people. Mm-hmm. So you wind up spending time with your C players who don't have a lot of room for growth because they're not a fit now and they won't be a fit tomorrow. Your B players who not always but very often have some limit on their skill set. They spend 90% of their time with them and not enough time with the A players. And what they really need to do is spend most of their time with A players. One reason they're not doing that is because they don't realize they're doing anything wrong. But the other reason is they have too many damn B and C players. And if you build a team of A players, that's where you need to be spending your time. So mistake number one is that C player trap of waiting too long to get rid of the C player. Mistake number two, is spending too much time with the B and C players, not enough with the A players. And mistake number three is I get a lot of leaders that say to me, I'll ask them, what percent of your team are A players? And they may say, well, right now it's about 15%. Mm-hmm. But I'd really like to get to 25%. It's like, well, why wouldn't you want to get to 75%?
Or 100%.
I get 100% maybe a pipe dream, right? Because you're always going to make hiring mistakes. But why not get to 75%? Oh, I can't have 75% A players on my team. They'll all want to raise. They'll all want promotions. I can't do that. Mm-hmm. And I kind of laugh at them and say, well, trust me, if you have 75% A players on your team, you will be growing at such a healthy rate that you'll be able to give people the promotions and the raises they want. Let's not worry about that until you get there.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. Do you ever get leaders looking at themselves and questioning, am I an A player or a B player? Do they ever do a self-study on themselves?
Absolutely, the best ones do.
Okay.
One of the things that I ask when I talk to a prospective client, and almost 100% of my business comes from referrals. So a CEO will call me and say, "Oh, I understand you're working with Ryan, and he says you're great. So I'd love to talk to you." And there are some CEOs that are very quick to say, and by the way, Mike, I have a really hard time holding people accountable. I don't know how to do it. I don't have a real clear vision of the future. I'm horrible at hiring people. I don't know how to have difficult conversations. The best ones who are self-aware enough and who are lifelong learners understand that they've got room to grow, and they believe in something that John Maxwell calls the law of the lid. And the law of the lid says the lid on any organization, if you're the leader, the lid on that organization is you. If you're not scaling up, your organization's not going to scale up. Now, when I know I might be in trouble when I'm talking to a prospective client is when all they're doing is complaining about their team. Mm-hmm. And then I'll say to them, you know what, Phil, where do you think you have to improve in order to achieve your vision as a company? And when I get silence and they really don't have an answer there, that tells me they're not very self-aware and they're probably not doing a great job of continuous learning. If they bring it up to me, or if there's a pause and they actually really start pondering that answer and they come back to me with at least some hypotheses of where they need to improve, then I know I've got potentially a pretty good potential client on the phone. So they've got to do that all the time. In fact, I incorporated into my practice a few years ago. I'm a little bit, when I work as a business coach, and that's what I do, I do things a little bit different than most business coaches. Most business coaches do one-on-one coaching. And while I do some of that, my business is about working with the entire executive team as a group.
Oh, good.
And I used to go in every month and I'd spend, a full day with the executive team. Every year I'd spend, 2 full days with them. And then I realized that it's really, if the CEO isn't scaling up, as I said earlier, the leadership team's not going to scale up, or they're at least going to hit a ceiling. So what I incorporated a few years ago with all of my clients is I said, look, if I'm going to work with your leadership team, and you together coming in every month, every quarter, every year, then as a CEO, I need to be doing one-on-one coaching with you. And that has made a really big difference in my clients, a big difference in my practice, because those CEOs, if they have a problem with accountability, then their leadership team's going to have a problem with accountability. So absolutely, those limitations are important that we tackle head on.
All right. We are Mind the Business Radio. We're going to have to take another quick break here, and we're going to come back.
Too.
Yeah, I know. We just keep zooming through these things, but there's so much information that Mike has for us.
I'm learning.
This is great. Anyway, we are with Mike Goldman, and you're listening to Mind the Business Radio. I'm Darwin.
I'm Ernie.
And I'm Suzanne.
And we're going to be right back right after this.
Does your business sell products or send data to customers in Europe? Do customers from the European Union stay at your hotel or bed and breakfast? If you answered yes, then a new international law applies to you. It's called GDPR, and it could potentially bankrupt your business if you choose to ignore it. To find out more about GDPR, go to www.mindthebusinessradio.com and click on the GDPR Turbo Pack link. Welcome back, everybody, to Mind the Business. I'm Suzanne Strong.
I'm Darwin.
And I'm Ernie Costello.
And today we're having a wonderful time here talking with Mike Goldman, who's the author of the book Performance Breakthrough, The 4 Secrets of Passionate Organizations. But we're not really talking about passionate organizations. Right now we're talking about how you build an A-team in your company, and everybody wants one of those. And we've been talking about what is an A-team, how can you build it? What are the benefits and biggest mistakes that companies make? And we danced around that topic of it's hard to fire people because sometimes that's a messy job, but you got to do it because it can waste time and money. And Mike, I want to ask you a big question. How does a company keep their A-team? What do you have to do that?
Yeah, that's critical. And one of the first things you've got to do to keep an A team is help your A players by coaching your B players to become A's and dealing with your C players. Because A players are not going to want to stay on a team very long if they're working with a whole bunch of people that aren't working as hard and aren't as talented as they are. So if you want to, keep those A players, you really have to manage your talent. One of the things I do with my clients when I work with the executive team, and I spend either, depending on my model with them, a day or 2 days a quarter with the team, with the executive team, and every 90 days we do a talent assessment. And in that talent assessment, the leaders for each of their direct reports, not necessarily for everybody in the company if there are multiple levels, but for each of their direct reports, we're using a tool for them to assess their direct reports as to whether they're A, B, and C players. And I use a 4-quadrant model that looks at productivity from low to high and living the core values from low to high. And what we do is we take an honest look at who the A, B, and C players are. Mm-hmm. And number one, we look at those A players, right? Because it's very easy to go right to the C players and say, oh, we got these problems we've got to deal with. Mm-hmm. But as I said earlier, one of the mistakes folks make is they spend most or all their time with their B and C players and assume their A players are just going to keep doing a great job. So the first thing we do is look at their A players and we say, okay, what do we need to do to continue to have those A players maximize their strengths, realize their potential? How could we coach and mentor our A players? How could we challenge them to do more? Because I've seen more A players leave out of boredom than anything else because they're not being challenged.
Okay.
So how do we coach and mentor? How do we challenge? How do we get them more training? How do we find out who they know? Because A players know other A players. So let's start out and look at those A players and how to get them to keep going, keep improving, keep challenging them. Let's look at the B players, figure out how to coach them to become A's. And then with the C players, I've already talked about the C players a bunch. But one of the things I tell my leaders is I say, look, for each C player, I'm going to ask you a simple question. And that question is, are we coaching or are we cutting the cord? And you're allowed to say, as soon as you see a C player who's low on core values, maybe low on productivity, it doesn't mean we have to fire them that day that they become a C player. Maybe it is someone just going through a difficult time. Maybe they're going through a divorce. Maybe someone close to them passed away. Maybe there's something going on that we believe they just need a little time on and we can coach them through. This isn't about being heartless. So I say, are we coaching or cutting the cord? Now, a leader may say, well, I believe I can coach him. And I can really coach him through this. Great, so we're coaching. Now, here's the agreement I have with my executive team. It's okay to say coaching, but if we come back 90 days from now and we're doing this talent assessment again, and that person is still here and they're still a C player, and you tell us you're not cutting the cord, you want to coach some more, well, then you might be the C player. Because we can't let a cancer stick around in our organization for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months while you think you can coach somebody when it's a pipe dream. And they may feel loyalty to that person, which is a wonderful thing. There's nothing wrong with feeling loyal to someone you hired. But my question to them is, who do you feel more loyal to? Do you feel loyal to that one individual, or do you feel loyal to this organization and the rest of the employees?
Exactly.
So assessing that talent quarterly becomes really, really important. And then the other piece of it, and this is, I'll give you kind of a shortened explanation of what my book, the 4 Secrets of Passionate Organizations, is about. The way you keep that A team is through these 4 secrets I talk about. Number 1 is called acceptance. And acceptance means we have to accept that not everybody's like us. Everybody has different learning styles. Everyone has different motivations. You may be motivated by money. And there's nothing wrong with that. That may be your primary motivation. Someone else might be motivated by service to the community. Someone else might be motivated by just new challenges and new learnings. And we have to understand that and accept everybody's different. Number 1. Number 2 secret is leverage. We need to stop focusing on just beating people up for their weaknesses and ourselves up for our weaknesses. And we need to understand what people's strengths are and start leveraging their strengths. That's secret number 2. Okay. Secret number 3 is called impact. And impact says we have to trust people enough to have them all feel like owners. Don't tell them what to do. Here are the 175 steps or the 12 steps to get this done. Tell them what the vision is. Tell them what you're trying to achieve. Get them on board and then set them loose. If you understand them, if they're an A player, if you're leveraging their strengths, let them feel like they have true impact and let them feel some ownership and true engagement. So the first secret's acceptance, second is leverage, third is impact, and the fourth I call celebration. And celebration says, number 1, we got to find ways to have fun at work. Work doesn't have to be, drudgery. It should be fun. We spend most of our waking hours doing this stuff. Let's make it fun.
Yeah.
And let's not wait until results to celebrate. Let's not wait until we beat our goals by 15% to celebrate. Let's understand the activities that lead to those results, the moments that lead to those results, and let's celebrate those activities and those moments.
Oh, sounds good to me.
Yeah, exactly. So you actually are building a lifestyle within the business where people can work together, they could grow together, they can help each other, and they can also have fun and make the business fun. I mean, there's no reason to get up in the morning and go to work if you hate where you're going. You know,
one of the real passions I have, and it's one of the big reasons I do what I do, is I want the word retirement to be a dirty word.
Amen.
I've seen too much. I saw, my grandfather, who was the best man I ever knew, passed away a number of years ago, but he was 75 years old. He was forced to retire. He was driving a cab, but he just couldn't see well anymore. And once he retired, this amazing guy with incredible pride and incredible energy sat on the couch and watched TV and didn't do anything. And 2 years later, he was gone.
Yeah.
Because he had
from
nothing
heart
to do.
failure. And to me, I can't imagine a life of doing something that you don't enjoy every day and just waiting until that day you could stop doing it. That amazes me that people sleepwalk through life in that way. So when I work with organizations, it's not just about helping them grow. I want to create an organization that people actually look forward to going to every day. And maybe they'll slow down at some point and travel more and play golf and do that. That's great. But why would they ever want to stop doing something they love to do?
And you're exactly right, because these people that we retire out have so much knowledge and experience,
and so much left to give.
So much left to give that we just see ya. Give them a gold watch, and in Ernie's case, a Timex.
It was nice though.
It stopped working.
But you know what I'm saying is just, if you're not having, we have a blast doing this, even though we tease each other, and we look forward to doing.
But I'm serious.
Yeah. Okay. Right. But and that's what I'm saying, because we're all kind of reaching that age where we're thinking about retirement and stuff. But you're right. It's a dirty word. I don't like the word retirement, because my folks and my dad passed away too quick too, because he just retired out of being a mechanic. He loved working on cars.
I think you need that challenge, and you need to be, if you're not learning or growing, I think you're dying.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you need to keep learning, and that's not to say some people may retire from what they do and then volunteer, and I mean, that's great. But I know my wife and I love to travel, and we had a couple years ago our 25th wedding anniversary. We did this beautiful trip to Paris and Italy, and we spent 14 days, and it was an amazing trip. But I'll tell you, by day 12 and 13. I'm like, you know what? I've had enough gelato, enough great food. This is wonderful. I kind of want to go home now.
Yeah.
And it was a great trip, but I needed to get back and kind of do real life again.
Do real life again. All right. Anyway, everybody, you're listening to Mind the Business Radio. Mind the Business A-Team Radio, I should say. And we have with us Mike Goldman, and we're having a great time talking with him, and we're going to continue our conversation right after this.
Does your business sell products or send data to customers in Europe? Do customers from the European Union stay at your hotel or bed and breakfast? If you answered yes, then a new international law applies to you. It's called GDPR, and it could potentially bankrupt your business if you choose to ignore it. To find out more about GDPR, go to www.mindthebusinessradio.com. and click on the GDPR Turbo Pack link.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to A-Team Radio, Mind the Business Radio. I'm Darwin.
I'm Ernie. A. Castello.
Oh,
I'm Darwin A. Strong.
I guess I'm Suzanne A. Although sometimes I feel like maybe I could be an A minus. I don't know.
Oh, that's okay, because it can fluctuate. As long as
Yeah.
it stays in the A range.
Okay.
Right? I mean, as long as you're getting an A, at school, when I got an A minus, I try and get rid of the minus. But
You actually got an A minus?
yeah, not that often. Anyway, when
We're building our A team. What can we say?
yeah, we're building our A team, and when you're building a culture of accountability, how do you make sure the team continues to perform and doesn't slip from being an A to an A minus or a B?
Yeah, I mean, that word accountability is an important one, and the question is, how do you build and how do you keep that culture of accountability? And when I talk to prospective clients, when I talk to new clients who are always CEOs or always and owners of the folks I talk to initially, and so many of them say things to me like, they're frustrated with their team, they're frustrated with their lack of growth, and they say, I just don't get it. How do you hold people accountable? What do I need to do? Fire everyone? They're supposed to do this, they're not doing it. How do I hold them accountable? And I think part of the problem is most organizations don't really understand what the word accountable even means, and how is accountable different than responsible. So one of the first things I teach my clients is there's a big difference between accountability and responsibility. And when I use the word, and I don't care what it says in the dictionary, I say here's the language we're going to use when we talk together. When we use the word responsibility or responsible, that means who's rolling up their sleeves and getting the job done. And that could be one person, it could be 1,000 people. So if I'm in front of an organization of 1,000 people, it may be absolutely appropriate and accurate for me to say we are all responsible for giving our clients wow levels of service.
Okay.
That could be a true statement.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's responsibility. Accountability is always and only one person. If you have multiple people accountable, you have no one accountable. So accountability is about really owning something. And there are, really two big pieces, of accountability, something I'll call organizational accountability and then process accountability. So organizational accountability says, let's look at our organization, let's look at our org chart, and let's understand what the different functions are. And let's understand who is accountable for each function. And it's one of the first things I do with my clients. We start going down, the first function may be a function called, the leader of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And very often right there we get stuck. If I'm in a partnership, they say, okay, leader of the company, that's Joe and Sue. They're co-CEOs or they're partners and they lead it. Well, one person needs to be accountable. And you've got two there. So if dad says no, they're going to go to mom. If mom says no, they're going to go to dad.
Exactly.
Or it might be, who's accountable for marketing? Well, these three people do marketing. Well, then no one's accountable. And by the way, early on in a company, if we have folks listening that are companies that maybe have 3 or 4 people or maybe 1 or 2 people, maybe you as the CEO are accountable for all of those functions initially. Mm-hmm. But in time, we need to figure out who's accountable. If you don't know who's accountable for marketing, then you may be doing a lot of work, but no one's accountable for those results. So there's got to be some organizational accountability, who's accountable for which functions. And then there's got to be what's called process accountability. And process accountability says, each and every quarter, and each and every year, there's got to be a set of priorities and some alignment around priorities. And priorities does not mean in the next year we have these 15 priorities. Priority means in the next year, these are the 3 most important things we've got to do. And here are the 2 to 3 most important things we've got to get done over the next 90 days. And I'm not talking about revenue's got to grow 20%. I'm talking about things you're actually going to go do. Maybe it's about breaking into a new market. Maybe it's about putting a new performance appraisal process in place. Maybe it's about overhauling your marketing program. But it's about creating 90-day priorities, and I call those rocks. Rocks are the most important things that you've got to put into your jar. Every quarter, every year. What are those 3 most important rocks for the quarter, and who's that one person accountable? If you say we're going to go do this and 3 people are accountable, it's not going to get done. If I go out to an organization, and one of the things I do with new clients is I'll ask people on the leadership team to write down what are the 3 most important priorities over the next 90 days. What are the 3 most important things this organization has to accomplish? And if I have a leadership team of 6 people, I may get 15 different most important things, as opposed to everyone agreeing on what the 3 are. So number 1 in process accountability is having these quarterly priorities, or what we call rocks, and having one person accountable for a rock. Number 2, it's having the right measures in place. So I'll use marketing again as an example. For marketing, how do we gauge whether marketing is successful? What are we looking at? Is it because we think we're doing some great marketing programs, or is it about the increase in the number of new leads coming into the sales team? What are the results we're looking for? What are the activities that drive those results, and how do we measure those, called lagging and leading indicators? A lagging indicator is a result, but if all you look at is a result, that's like looking in the rearview mirror and driving your car. We need leading indicators, things that we're in control of, that are activities that are predictive of those results. So for marketing, what are the right leading and lagging indicators? For sales, what are they? For finance, for HR. So we've got to have not only alignment around the right priorities for process accountability, but we've got to have alignment around what we're measuring and what does success mean? What does failure mean? And then number 3 in process accountability is about having the right meeting rhythms. And I find having the right daily huddles, weekly meetings, monthly, quarterly, annual, having the leaders and the team coming around the table to hold each other accountable, to tweak and pivot around priorities as they need to. If you don't have that in place, accountability dies. And especially that weekly meeting, which is kind of a weekly, not a status update, but it's a weekly accountability meeting to make sure all the leaders around the table are doing what they committed to do. If you've got the right weekly meeting, if it's happening weekly, you've got the right agenda, accountability is going to thrive. If you don't have that weekly meeting, we missed it for the 3rd week in a row because Joe couldn't make it, and Sally's on vacation, so we didn't do the meeting. Or you do the meeting and it's just going around the table, so Ernie, what do you have going on? Suzanne, what do you have going on? Okay, Darwin, what do you? And then the person at the end of the table is looking at their watch saying, I got real work to do. I don't have time for this garbage. So if you're not running it the right way and really holding people accountable, accountability is going to die. And your A players will go along with that. Your A players will either become B players because the energy's not there and who cares, or they're going to go somewhere else and be A players.
That is so true, because I've seen a lot of companies fail because they don't have the meetings, they don't have the communication, they don't have the accountability. They're always passing the buck. Well, it's his fault or their fault, and they're not really there to solve situations come up, because they're going to come up on an everyday basis. There's going to be problems and situations and things, and if you don't have a team or a person who's going to be accountable to solve that problem or situation, it's just not going to go away.
Absolutely. And believe it or not, I have companies I work with that may be, 75, I'm thinking specifically of a $75 million company that's been growing, pretty nicely over the last 5 years or so. And before I came on board, they'd never had leadership team meetings.
Oh,
I don't get it. How do you, it was just the CEO telling people what to do and then following up whether they were doing it. But the head of finance never knew what the head of marketing was doing. The head of marketing didn't know what the head of manufacturing was doing. And the CEO she was running around like crazy trying to make sure everything got done. They never had a leadership team meeting. It amazes me.
Man, that's unbelievable. But that's an everyday thing in business, I think. And people really need to really work on it, think about getting accountable people and putting the teams accountable too. So, Anyway, you're listening to Mind the Business Radio. Mind the Business, I should say, A+ Radio. I'm Darwin.
I'm Ernie.
And I'm Suzanne.
And we're going to take a quick break and come back and find out how we can get a hold of Mike right here on Mind the Business Radio.
Does your business sell products or send data to customers in Europe? Do customers from the European Union stay at your hotel or bed and breakfast? If you answered yes, then a new international law applies to you. It's called GDPR, and it could potentially bankrupt your business if you choose to ignore it. To find out more about GDPR, go to www.mindthebusinessradio.com and click on the GDPR Turbo Pack link.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We have been talking about how to build your A-team with Mike Goldman. And so, Mike, could you tell us a little bit more about your company?
Yeah, my company is called Performance Breakthrough, and the company is me. So I'm a business coach, and what I do is I work with small and mid-sized organizations that are where the CEO and the leadership team, at some level, they're frustrated that they are not growing fast enough. They're not growing consistently enough, or they're not growing profitably enough, and that could mean they're growing at 20%, but they know they should be growing at 50 or 60%. So I work with successful companies, good companies that want to be great. The CEOs I work with need to be lifelong learners, and they really need to care about their people. As you can tell from the discussion we're having, what I do is not just about growth in revenue, growth in profitability. It's really important for me that the companies I work with are building great companies to work for. So they've really got to care about their people. So those are the types of folks I work with across industries. When I say small to mid-size, typically the companies I work with are about 5 to 10 million in revenue, up to about 100 and 150 million dollars in revenue. And again, I work with the leadership team. I basically become a senior coach that acts and kind of feels to them like a part-time member of the executive team. My relationships are long-term. I work with about 10 or 11 clients at a time, and they're all long-term relationships. And my goal in working with them is to, number one, help them achieve top and bottom line growth, and I bring a set of tools on how to build the right strategies, how to hire and keep the right people, how to manage cash flow, how to execute with discipline and accountability. It's about creating improved leadership and improved employee engagement, and it's also about making sure the CEO is building a business they want to build, that they're building a business that makes them happy, they're building a business that makes them feel fulfilled.
Well,
sounds like you care.
Yeah, we mentioned that you wrote a book called Performance Breakthrough, The 4 Secrets of Passionate Organizations. So how can people find out more information, and how can they get a hold of the book?
So two ways to find out, to get the book. You can get it two ways. You could either go to Amazon. It's available on Amazon. So that's one way, is just search on Amazon for Performance Breakthrough or the 4 Secrets of Passionate Organizations. Or they can go to my website at performance-breakthrough.com, and what you'll find there is certainly some information about the book, but you'll also find some great videos I call Breakthrough Ideas, short little 2 or 3 minute videos that give some tips on how to grow your company, how to create the right organization, how to be the right kind of leader. And on there as well is also something called a 4 decisions assessment. And the 4 decisions are people, strategy, execution, and cash. And it's a great assessment that as a CEO you can take with your leadership team that helps you understand where your biggest opportunity areas are. It's all online, and I'm willing to do a 90-minute debrief with anybody that takes it online as well. So it's a really powerful tool. and it's all at performance-breakthrough.com.
Okay.
All right.
Wow, that's great, Mike. Thank you for being on the show today, and thank you for helping folks. I can tell that you're passionate about this because the folks at home can't tell, but Mike's on video, and he's just talking with his hands, and he's all excited.
And he's all
He's got that passion thing down.
Yeah, you do. I mean, it's all written all over your face and everything. You just love what you do.
He's good at this.
And
I
you're
think
good
he
at
cares
it.
a little bit, yeah.
And we're going to have him back on the show.
Yes,
Heck,
please.
why not? We'll talk about the book and everything, too, when we have him back. So,
that sounds great.
You got it. Anyway, everybody, you've been listening to Mind the Business Radio, and we hope you really enjoyed this show. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud, and give us some feedback on the show. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Darwin.
I'm Ernie.
And I'm Suzanne.
And we'd like to thank you for listening to the show today, and we'll catch you next time right here on Mind the Business Radio. Mind the Business Radio was produced in association with Taylor Pacific Video. Copyright 2018.